questions, so those who are not here can see it. Thank you for showing up today. And I will give a quick synopsis of my health situation. You were asking about it. I thought I'd get everybody, and I had surgery on my heel last Tuesday, which is why we didn't have class on Wednesday. I had a torn Achilles tendon. It wasn't torn off. It was just, there was a tear in the tendon itself. It had been bothering me for about 4 months, 5 months. So I finally said, I got to do something because it's keeping me from doing anything. The orthopedic surgeon, they did a nerve block on my lower leg, and I felt absolutely nothing until yesterday. It was totally numb, which was wonderful.
Right.
They sent me home with it's crazy, with a bottle full of oxycodone, the codeine, whatever it is.
Uh-oh.
I don't want to take that if I don't have to. If it's killing me, I'll take it. But they sent 50 of them. Anyway, so haven't had to touch that. Tylenol is doing the trick right now. I'll be in the boot and cast and everything for 6 weeks. And then start physical therapy, but should be up and around in several weeks from now. Fortunately, I can do all this online, all this classwork online, and don't have to worry about that. So, yeah, this is all good. I'm happy, and my wife is taking wonderful good care of me. She's very patient and puts up with an awful lot from a grumpy old man. That's me. Right. So, Lucretia asked when I was going to be grading or letting you know about grades of papers. If you send me a paper, I'll get to it. I'll check probably tomorrow on see what's been turned in, and then I'll let you know if I, whatever. I will. You generally try to read your papers and get them back to you as soon as I can. The final exam, which is, this is the last week of classes. The final exam is a week from Wednesday, the 6th, I think it is, or 5th. I will post it on Canvas, just like it did the midterm. If you don't get it or you can't operate it on Canvas, let me know and I'll send it to you by email and we can do it that way. It will be just much like the midterm, multiple choice, matching, true, false, and probably one larger essay question to get your grasp of the overall piece. And it covers the whole semester. We go back, and so I've given you some review stuff. So let me see if you have questions about anything about where we are this semester, grades, papers, anything else you need to check with me about. All good. All right. I don't know if you got a chance to look at the paper I sent you. No.
Talk about that study guide.
Yeah. So for some reason, it's not coming up. Hold on. Now, can you see that?
Yeah.
All right. There's the review paper. There are 3 pages on it. And I've just put together a bunch of questions that I think you should be thinking about, reviewing, looking back at your notes, at the books, the syllabus, review presentations and classes if you want to. here's what and I need to say this about the exam. It's mostly about recognition rather than recall. I don't know if you know the difference between those two different kinds of memory business. Anybody know what the difference is between recognition and recall before I explain it? All right. Yeah, this is the way the brain works. Recognition is when you see something, you see a name or a date or an event or something, you say, yeah, I recognize that's what that is, and I'm able to say what it is. That's recognition. Recall is if you're asked, what was the date of the Declaration of Independence? You have to shuffle through your random only memory in your brain to come up with the exact date. That's recall. I probably won't be asking you much recall stuff. I mainly want to know if you can recognize the stuff when you see it, like in matching or true, false, and so forth. So that's what we're going to be doing. The exam also is like the midterm, open book. You can use your books and your notes and go back and look at the presentations if you need to, although it's pretty time consuming. But that's part of why you do the review between now and then. I'm gonna ask you to commit to not using the internet to just look up answers, and commit to not talking to anybody else and getting help from anybody else. Since I'm not around to monitor, that's the way we'll deal with that ethically, and I'm not too worried about it. But that's so it's a matter of recognition rather than recall, and it's about sorry, should turn it off. And it's going to be about open book and using so that and the theory behind that is it is about recognition. I want you to be able to recognize when somebody says, well, what on earth was Reconstruction? You recognize the term, and then you can follow that up to find out what you're trying to, you can recall it or you can look it up. That's the kind of, because you know about what it was and when it was, right? The second thing is open book, using what you can find, and so that, and the theory behind that is knowledge of history is not so much like knowing your multiplication tables or knowing what the grammar rules are, that you just kind of be able to have to know them. But most of this stuff is, that you can look something up and find out what the answer is. My definition of a scholar or an academic scholar is somebody that knows a bunch of stuff, but they know how to find a bunch of stuff. What books do I look in? What areas do I check online? What sources will be useful to that? Where was that in that old history book that I can go back and look that up? Those kind of things. And it's a lot easier now that we have the internet in general. So that's the theory behind the kind of teaching I'm doing with you. Questions, observations about that? Hello, Kim, glad to see you.
How was your surgery?
I'm good. I was just I'll repeat. It went very well, better than expected. I'll be in a boot of our cast for 6 weeks. They gave me a nerve block, and I have been totally without pain, which is quite amazing. Right now, Tylenol is all I'm needing for the little bit of pain that's coming back.
I'll be glory.
So thank you for your care and concern. Questions about, I'm getting questions about on the test in general?
I think you've been very explanatory about it.
Okay, thank you. Glad you think so.
I meant to ask you, Dr. Sawyer, this isn't timed. When we open it, we don't have a certain amount of time until it expires.
It's not timed. There's a deadline. It has to be in by, I forget what I'll say, but whether it's 5 o'clock PM or midnight, but
Okay,
that's it. You can open it Wednesday morning and take as long as you need to. You can go back to it. You should be able to come and go if you need to. That's my intent anyway. And of course, if it's, in your case, Kim, I'm going to email it to you anyway, so that's the way that's going to work, because her server is still not taking
the
care of it.
school has shut me down. I am a threat to the school security.
Yeah.
Well, we've been
I-
suspecting that all along.
Senior Tech, Julius Lydia said, at this time, we are closing your account, your ability to access Canvas. We are sorry, but you are a
Right.
master to the security of Simmons. I'm like, who does this
Mm.
I'm so sorry. That's
at
great.
finals?
Yeah,
So I'm grateful, Dr. Sawyer. Thank you.
we can work around this stuff. The whole purpose is to not prove that you can use Canvas, but to prove you have learned something. And we can find lots of ways to do that.
Yes.
And you all did really well on the midterm, so I'm not too worried about it. So let's go through any other questions or comments?
Mm.
So let's go down through this little list. Going back to the very beginning, the first few weeks, I talked about studying history in general. And then we talked about colonialism and the European Reformation and African indigenous religions as the general background for then getting into the history of African people in North America. So the colonialism and the Reformation are mostly white people's experiences, but because they're connected to the Black experience in America, I wanted you to kind of have that context. Anyway, thinking about history itself, name 3 things you look for in reading about history.
I guess like important trends, events, people.
And dates.
Yep. And people, right? And then how do you engage your critical thinking about the stuff you read about in history?
I'm sorry, you say that question again?
Second part of that, number 1, how do you engage your critical thinking about reading historical literature? I gave you one particular advice about watching and listening and reading.
Like, what is the history? I don't know. I guess I would say, is it accurate or something? I don't know. Is it?
Well, that's a piece of it, but it's pretty hard to tell if you're talking
Right.
about what happened 600 years ago. So you could double check the accuracy with something else for sure, but there was another angle on it.
Wasn't it some form of challenging of thought?
Right.
Yeah.
No.
So the particular thing you watch for, I'll just give you this one, is what's the bias or agenda of the writer? All of us have our limited perspectives and biases, and you look at if you read something, you say, now, is there an angle here that this person is pushing? Awful lot of literature about history is based on white supremacy, for example, and that the inferiority of anybody who's not totally white. That's a bias. there's a whole lot of history written about the United States that's very flattering about the way the United States has run itself for the last 250 years, and ignores the horrors of slavery totally. That's a particular bias. The Pin and Pin, she is a Methodist minister and he is a non-religious academic. Their particular angle on it is, we want you to have a look at least two sides of a story of looking at history. And so that was pretty interesting. I didn't see an awful lot of bias on either one of their parts. So there was that.
Do you think it's necessary, Dr. Sawyer, to look at two forms or two references to see if that tone is the same within critical thinking measures?
Yeah. One of the reasons I asked you to get at least 2 or 3 books as your background for your paper is you get a different perspective. And you then begin to look at that perspective, and particularly if you were studying one of the chapters in the Methodists or the Baptists or the Pentecostals, for example, you can say, and how does that compare with the particular perspective of the Pins? And did they do a good job compared to this or not? That's using your critical thinking that way. Yeah. Now here, a quick second one is a quick true or false question. Is Christianity primarily a white European religion? Why or why not?
I'm gonna say no, it's false.
Okay.
And the reason is that the premise of Christianity, yes, but along that portion, you had small of Lutherans, small of the Pentecostals, small of within Europe. But when they came and went into the other countries, there was quite a few Christianity as the missionaries.
Right.
When they got to America, it just opened up.
Right.
So
And
concept
yeah,
now was majority.
that's a piece of the history. Right. Exactly. There was another piece of the history around that in terms of where it started. And
it started in Africa and Asia, right?
yeah. Yeah. In case anybody wants to suggest this is a white people's religion, Jesus was not a white person.
Right.
He was a brown Palestinian Jew.
Right.
And that's in Asia, actually. But it spread very quickly into Africa and Asia. And long before it spread into Europe, major pieces of Europe. So yeah. And then the other piece of that question is my bias, and that is the American Black churches are a unique form of Christianity.
Right.
That is in some ways very unlike white evangelical fundamentalist Christianity. It almost sounds to me like, and in the class I teach on transcendent, I'll raise the question is the God of white religion a different God than the one God of Black religion?
Hmm.
Good question.
No, but that's we didn't talk about that in here, but that's another piece of the agenda of some people approaching things. So I gave you a paper, number 3, I gave you a paper on the historical sources of white supremacy. I don't know if you remember any of that, and then if not, go back and look at it before the test. Name 3 of the historical sources of white supremacy, and there were about 7 or 8 of them in this paper, that have shaped the life of African Americans in the United States.
Mm.
This goes all the way back to earliest Christianity, and then through colonial times, and then into the the great passage across the ocean and so forth. It's been a long time since February when we talked about this.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to just let you look that when I go back and look at that on. And if you can't find it, I can send it to you. But on Canvas, there's the paper by me. It's about a 5-page paper called "The Historical Sources of White Supremacy."
You
Can
talking
you
about that?
me that?
The Historical Sources of White Supremacy, right? It was a
Yes, sir.
paper that's on Canvas. I'll send you another copy of that.
Yes,
Cameron,
can't right now is a bad word. We don't say the C word. They
Yeah,
put me off.
I know, I understand.
Is that the one that you had written yourself?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember reading it. I know it's in there somewhere.
Yeah. If you can find it, let me know. I'll send you another copy. But that's an important historical piece that is my bias, of course, that white supremacy, and it fits with what Dr. Cosby has always said. White supremacy is baked into American culture, European culture in a way. The European countries are no better about race relations than America, actually, in a lot of ways.
Wow.
So go back and look at that. There, it goes all the way back to early Christianity. Remember the book, the chapter from the book called Zurara's Tears?
Yes. Yes.
That was a piece of that.
Okay.
And that experience and what the Portuguese were doing in terms of conquering, capturing, and extracting the resources of
Yes.
other countries.
Yes, sir.
And that was based on pure white supremacy. And there was a term that they used particularly about that, and that gets into question number 4. What were the main objectives of European colonialism?
So what was the objective of European colonialism?
Yes, sir.
Like
That's
what,
what you said,
supersessionism, you know,
conquer
conquer?
and subtract.
So yes, supersessionism was the whole business because they, and what was supersessionism? That's one of the historical sources, by the way.
They are God's people, like that the Jews rejected the true God, and that they are the God's chosen people, I guess, essentially.
Exactly. And and that's also baked into an awful lot of Christianity. Most people's interpretation of the Old Testament is that's all out the window now because Jesus came and we now have a new covenant with the real people of God, etc.
Yes.
Okay. What other objectives of colonialism was? I just actually said it to you a few minutes ago, but I wasn't thinking about answering that question. What were the European countries hoping to do? Why did they want to do colonial, going into countries in Africa and in North America and in Asia and create colonial underlings, countries that belonged to the European country?
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone know the call link? I think Gary is trying to get in.
Is that who it was?
I believe it is. He's the only one I could think of that were asked for that particular one. I'm trying to pull it up.
That was me.
Is that you?
Yeah, this is Stephen Owens. That's who asked for the link.
Oh, Stephen.
Okay, because somebody put the link out there. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was just trying to make sure whoever it was got it. I was trying to look it up.
Oh, I see. Oh, sorry, Stephen. I didn't see that you didn't get that. Thanks, Maya, for sending the link. It's good. And welcome, Stephen. Glad to see you. Or hear you anyway. So colonialism, what were they about? What was driving them to do that?
I don't know why I keep having this word religious purification in my head.
Huh?
Yeah.
What do you think that means? Talk about that, Bill.
Uh, I'm looking at it as they felt everyone else was like heathens or savages,
Yeah,
and they were trying to convert them to Christianity.
exactly. Yeah. There was that whole rationale that it's okay if we steal these people away from their homes and their lives and separate them from their families and their culture, because they can become Christians and then their souls are saved. Nevertheless, never mind, they'll be slaves for the rest of their lives. Yeah. Okay, what else? That's a good one.
Hmm.
So I guess he basically said it, to claim and to conquest and
There you go. Yeah.
Was it ever for any form of financial gain? Because I know in America,
the game the economics of the immigrants and
Yeah.
colonial.
They can make money on the slaves by free labor, right? And also
right.
by selling them. They can make money by stealing the resources of the country. Africa is full of precious metals, and that was a big piece of it: gold and silver and diamonds and other things. The natural resources, the lumber, of the in America, in the North America, beaver pelts were a very big resource that they were exporting into Europe for felt hats.
Poor thing.
Just about eliminated the beaver population of North America.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the empire gets rich on other people's misfortunes.
Mm.
Exactly. So that's the third piece. That's the extraction part I mentioned. We're going to extract all of your natural resources and utilize them for our richness, our wealth, and our security.
That's true.
Yeah. So the conquer, by golly, we're stronger, everybody else. Capture, take people and use them for our own purposes, and then extraction. And let's see, this is a particularly European patriarchal approach to the world. Let's see whose empire can be bigger. Mine can be bigger than yours. So Portugal said to Spain, I could have a bigger empire. Spain said, no, we're going to send Columbus off and get a bigger empire than you. England got into it. France got into it. Germany got into it. They're all looking for building the biggest bunch of colonies, the biggest empires in the world. There was another word that got thrown in there. I don't know if you remember this term: manifest destiny.
I've heard of that word.
What do you think that's about?
Uh, I heard it in elementary school. That's where I remember from. But
Wow.
um, well, I know manifest and destiny. I guess um, come back to me. I don't even know. Come back. Come back.
You got it somewhere. You are so
Yeah,
smart.
well, see, you're doing the recognition business. I recognize the term. That's good.
I do. I remember that word manifest
Yeah.
destiny. It's like because the word manifest is in there. It's like something like because when you manifest something, it like comes into being.
Yeah,
Isn't that like speaking it into existence?
Yeah, like that. Yes. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
it's something that's clear, it's obvious, it's put out there for everybody to see.
Yeah.
This is manifest, right? And destiny is
Well,
what?
going somewhere. Going
Yeah.
somewhere.
That's our goal. That's our that's where
Right,
what we're
manifest
supposed to be
destiny.
about.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
And because we are God's chosen people, and we are the dear Christians in the heart of God, it is our manifest. It's built into what God planned for us from the beginning of time, that we're going to create these empires and capture and conquer, capture, and extract for our own well-being, so we can get rich. That was the whole business, and that was their rationale. It was their objective, and it was to create empires. The empire stuff is still alive and well. England finally let go of most of their colonies, but they've kept, they call what they call now a commonwealth. So they still are connected to a lot of their countries they controlled. They got kicked out of India by a popular uprising by a guy by the name of Gandhi. Remember that name? Through nonviolent resistance. But yeah, the French were in French, and the Germans and the English were in Europe. They just divided it up. They got together in a conference table, around a conference table, and said, "You take Congo and we'll take Kenya. You take Gambia and we'll take," and they just divided it up. So they weren't fighting each other. They were just gonna, it's for everybody.
Over land that wasn't theirs.
Yeah. So colonialism, how did that shape the life of African Americans in the United States?
We had nothing to call our own. We didn't originate. We're not Italians. We don't have Italy. We're not, Polish. We don't have Poland. We are from all over, in a country that we came over for free labor.
Mm-hmm.
We're just nomadic.
Yep, there's an
We
identity
lost our
issue there.
heritage and our cultures with them colonizing the country.
Yeah. So that you've had to shape a new culture in this new country, adapting as you can in order to live, in order to make it work.
Mhm.
Without a real identity, it's hard to know where did you come, unless you've done DNA. You may not know what country your ancestors came from,
True.
right?
True.
And the colonialists made real clear, we're not going to let you talk about that. That's
Right.
not important, because that's, yeah, exactly. Colonialism also shaped the life of African Americans religiously, because what are the main religions of African Americans in America today?
Say that again.
What are the main religions of African Americans today?
Methodist.
Christianity and Islam.
Yeah. So you got Methodists and Baptists, got a few others of those things, and Islam. None of those is an indigenous African religion, right? So the fact that in order to adapt to life in America, Africans figured out how to adapt Christianity to their experience in life. And they may not have happened had they stayed in Africa and developed their own history and development.
Man,
Yeah. Now,
that would have
a lot of people in Africa are Christians today,
Wow.
but not because they were forced to go there. Yep. So let's talk about the shift now to the Reformation. You begin to see how, I want you to see the pacing of how this course worked. We're moving on to the Protestant Reformation in Europe. What can you trace the history of American Black denominations back to particular leaders and movements in the Protestant Reformation? What's the connection between the history of the European Reformation and particular denominations in American Black churches? These are the connections I want you to make.
Hold on here.
So this goes back to John Wesleyan and Henry VIII and the Martin Luther and all of that. Am I
Yep.
wrong?
Yep.
Okay.
So, and specifically,
And then
what Black churches
Your
really
Rich.
trace back to Wesley?
Okay.
What was the denomination traced back to Wesley?
Which
Meth-
denomination?
Methodist, yeah,
Your Methodist.
yeah. And it was connected to King Henry VIII. Why?
Because of the disagreement.
He couldn't get a divorce.
Yeah.
He decided that it was too astute.
So yeah, he was rebelling against the Pope, and he created a separate denomination called the Anglican Church, and he was the head of it. And what religion denomination was John Wesley? Was he a Methodist?
What are my notes?
No, he was a devout Christian.
Well, so were Methodists.
Well, at first, yeah, he was Methodist, but
No, he
he
started the Methodist
he
Church.
started out as a Christian, didn't he?
Well, he was Anglican.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Christian is that term is very broad, can refer to just about any particular version of that. But I was looking for the denomination. So he was Anglican. He then created the Methodist Church, but it's kind of like, was Jesus a Christian? No, Jesus was a Jew. You start a movement and it goes from there. Yeah, so Wesley to connect back to England and the background of the African Methodist denominations. What's another connection back to the Protestant Reformation of Black Christianity?
Yorich? No.
Say that again, please.
Yorich, what's his name? Ziegler?
Oh, Ulrich Zwingli. Okay, what's the connection there?
The Reformation in Switzerland. Um,
Well, he was definitely one of the leaders of the Swiss Reformation. As I don't know of a direct relationship with that to an American black denomination.
no, but
John,
John Calvin is,
Okay, how's that connection? What
because
make
they came up with the Calvinist, and because even with the Baptists, when they the Baptists got the breaking off into all these different conventions, and they said that some of the leadership, they went back into their Calvinistic.
Yes.
It's not coming out, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
They were some Baptists, still are some Baptists that are mainly Calvinist. And where was Calvin? Where did he do Reformation? What country?
France.
Switzerland. Yeah. And he had a very clear notion that God is the superior to everything, and God's figured everything out in advance, and you really don't have any choice about whether you're going to be a Christian or not. God has planned it out for you in advance. The fancy word for that is predestination. You were predestined to either be saved or damned.
Nah.
A lovely notion. One that Presbyterians don't even buy anymore, but the Baptists do. The Calvinist Baptists do. Other Baptists took a different tack of that. What do you remember about that? How did they split up the other way? So what's the white background of the black Baptist churches? Who do we go back to for that?
You said for Baptist churches?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Oh.
not Whitfield?
The Puritans.
Very much connected with the Puritans. There's one particular name of a leader that
Roger Williams.
yeah, there you go. Roger Williams. And he was known as a separatist.
Yeah. Let's see.
He wanted to separate the Baptist people of his belief from the Anglicans and all the others because he was trying to get back to the pure Bible.
Right.
Now, how's that different than how did that and the Baptists in general differ from the Calvinists? If Calvinists say you don't have any choice about being saved, what do the other side of the Baptists say?
Choice.
it's a choice, isn't it?
You do have a choice.
Yeah, it's free will. Right.
Mhm.
It is. That's why revivals brought in a lot of folks into the Baptist churches, the Great Awakenings, because the message was you can choose to be a follower of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Your life can be changed as a result of that.
Right.
And that's
Right.
your choice.
Mm.
Yes, sir.
Like, like he's not gonna force himself on you. He's a gentleman. He's not going. He's like he wants you to get saved, but he's not just gonna say, "Oh, you gotta get saved or you're going to hell." He's not like it. So he's giving us free will, as you said.
Yeah, that's the theological difference between the Calvinists and the free will or the revivalist Baptists, the evangelical Baptists. So saving souls becomes an issue in some churches because we got to get out there and get the message to them so they can decide, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Roger Williams started Baptist churches, and then black folks were attracted to Baptist churches mainly through to revivals,
Right.
but also because the Baptists appealed to them because it was more relaxed, informal worship, more emotional, more connected with the baptism, the water itself, all that stuff. So that, but it's, I want you to know there's this connection to white Reformation into how black churches came to be. And then you can turn on your critical thinking and says, now how's that working out for us? But those are the choices, or those are the trends that have made it happen. So let's talk about the religions of Africa. That was a piece of a whole week we spent working on that stuff. What do you know about the culture and religions of the captured Africans that carried over into the black church culture? Again, drawing the historical connection between what happened in the past, what people experienced, and how they adapted to it.
The way they worship, as far as the ring shout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Music, drums.
Yeah.
What'd
So
you
many,
say?
it was so many different tribes that couldn't communicate with each other, so they used other things to communicate with each other. So that was within their worship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Drumming, music, emotional connection, connection with nature, understanding of spirits and ancestors.
Yeah.
All that's big piece of that African that still hangs around in black culture today.
Spiritual use of water.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them, because of baptism and how baptisms were given out in these rivers and lakes, it was like reminding them of their own homeland, with how water was used as a spiritual presence.
Yes. Yeah, that felt familiar.
Yes.
What was how did the idea of God carry over into black religion from African religions?
Because they always recognize a supreme being.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounded familiar. Oh, you're talking about the high God. Sure, I'm for that. And to some extent, minor inferior gods that are sort of in between the high God and us. Well, there's Jesus and the Holy Spirit. So that sounded familiar as well. Didn't sound totally foreign to folks.
Deities.
Say that again.
Deities. Did I pronounce it right?
Deities. He's saying deities.
Oh, deities. Yeah, right. Yeah, yes, exactly. Different deities. Yeah. And putting religions together and adapting them is thought of as by some people as a sin. You should accept Christianity as the pure doctrine that's been handed down, and you can't combine it or think about it in any other way than these pure doctrines, most of which came out of the white church in the Middle Ages and around colonialism and the Reformation. Now, no, Christianity has always changed and adapted. It was in the first 100 years after Jesus, there were probably 50 different Jesus movement communities around the Mediterranean. And each of them had their own particular worship and leadership models and rules and beliefs. And that all kind of got commonized in the first 300 years, but they were adapting to what they thought at the moment and how they could make religion work. It's been happening for 2,000 years. Not a big deal. That's my sermon about it. That's my agenda. You can disagree with that if you want. Okay, and true or false, all Africans before the time just around the time of colonialism were all pagans and savages, right?
No.
Really? Tell me about that.
They had their, as far as the Europeans were concerned, they gave them that title of being pagans and savages. That was the titles the Europeans gave them.
Right.
But in the African setting, they had families, they had education, they just communicated within their own language, and the Europeans didn't understand it. They
Right.
had, you know, families and so on and so forth. They just did it their way and not the European way. The Europeans did not know, and what they did not know and understand, they feared.
Yeah. Yeah. There were cultures, there were high
Educated.
nation states with art and religion and government, but because they didn't fit the European mold, it looked savage and barbarian. Right? Exactly. So the question, let's see. Oh, question number 7. Another specific element of the African religion and how it get carried over is, and the term is the hush harbors, Hush, hush harbors.
The Visible Institutes.
Say some more, please.
Basically, the black church for the slaves they would have in the woods so that the white masters couldn't dictate their sermons,
Right.
couldn't dictate their worship, their praise, and they called it the Invisible Hush Harbor or the Invisible Institute.
Right.
And they would dance, they would worship, they would praise. If someone got too loud, they would try to muffle the sound as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was certainly not directly Christian in those early times. They were working out their own way of being religious, expressing their desire to connect with the universe and to God in their own way, in their own culture. And then that got carried over into religious development, and as you've already said, with the singing and the shouting and the drums and dancing and so forth. Yeah. So number 8, were any of the Africans trafficked to America Christians or Muslims?
Yes.
What do you know about that?
Some that came across on the boat were Muslims. Not all were Christian, but some were.
Mm-hmm.
They had already accepted that in their own land. The
Right.
Muslims just wasn't, it wasn't as popular amongst their own land, but there were some.
Yeah. The Islam spread very quickly into Africa from its beginning in the 600s of the Common Era after Muhammad. and it just caught on like wildfire throughout Africa, because it was closer to African religions than Christianity, for sure, in a lot of ways. And it basically was an empowering religion for people. There were also pockets of Christianity. The Ethiopians and the Egyptians were heavily Christian, and then that got spread into a lot of places, including into sub-Saharan Western Africa, for example. So yeah, probably a fair number of the folks who were brought as slaves were not pagans, but were Christians. That's not how they got treated, of course, but that's what it was. Number 10. I'm sorry. Number 9. We mentioned this before. What religious?
That one earlier, didn't we?
We did talk about that. What were those religious trends that attracted Africans to Christian churches? It's a particular name of a series of events or a movement. There were
Revivals.
2 of them.
Revivals was one.
Well, that's the general term behind it, but that wasn't the name given to it.
Oh,
They were revival services as a part of the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening.
Okay.
So in effect, among the major trends and events in history that I want you to remember, we start with the colonial empire, building colonial empires, and then the Reformation. Then, and we get into North America and the African experience there. The Great Awakenings is the next big historical event that
What
I
did you?
want you to be aware of.
Can you repeat that? You said the Great Awakenings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know it was 2 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So late 1800s and late 1700s and early 1800s.
Okay.
This religious fervor to have these big camp meetings and revivals
Yeah.
spread across America. Yeah. And they weren't segregated out, didn't prevent Black people from showing up. So instead of, they could find out about these things without having to go into a white church where they weren't welcome. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Number 10. Can you name a leader of a slave rebellion in America? And was that connected to a church?
Nat Turner.
Exactly.
Turner.
Yay, we got Nat Turner. And what religion was he?
Baptist.
Baptist.
He was a good Baptist boy. Exactly. Yeah. So the slave owners fear that if folks got Christianity, they might get into resistance. They were right. Yeah. Christianity suggests that freedom is important. All right, now, number 11, what are the earliest Black churches in America? Where were they? What were they? This is a recall question, I should notice.
The Methodist, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
I was going to say, yeah, one of them.
The AMEs.
Yeah.
Would the CMEs be with that too?
They were a little later, and they were in the South. The AME and AME Zion were in, where did those 2 first churches start?
Rhode Island.
No, that was the Baptists were centered, the white Baptists were centered in Rhode Island.
Wait a minute, because it was an odd place.
Walter, where they start at?
No,
I'm sorry. I had everybody on mute for a second. Where did they start?
Yeah, the Methodist.
No, the first Black churches, and they were Methodist. Yeah.
They were in the South. I have to look back through my notes here. I'm not sure where in the South, because then they branched out into the North. In,
Asbury to do this.
in Philadelphia and New York when they started branching up north.
That was it. Yep. Philadelphia and New York were the ones I was thinking about, but there were some on the East Coast in the South as well. Right.
Yeah. I think it was Alabama and South Carolina.
Yeah. Right. And so that, and there were some names of their first black pastors and so forth. And why did those churches become separate black churches there in New York and Philadelphia? We talked about that story.
The congregation
Right.
felt that even though slavery was over, that they were still being infringed on. One specific point was how they were told when they could pray and do offering. And this finally came to a head when the black congregation of the church were physically removed because they refused to wait in line to do prayer and offering.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're telling us we can't pray. We're not good enough to pray with you all.
But black folks started joining in masses, and it was starting to outweigh the white members of the church, and they got a little fearful.
That was, yeah, that white fragility sure plays a role here, doesn't it? Yep. Yeah. So we've got to keep these black folks in line. It's kind of like the protests that were held last weekend in Louisville, and they started marching down Bardstown Road. And I'm sorry, that's a white neighborhood. You can't march in a white neighborhood.
Sure
We
did.
stopped them. Same process.
Yeah, you can stay down there on Broadway, but don't you come up here on Bardstown Road.
Exactly right.
So what?
And all that, the Highlands and all that. Oh, no, you're
Doing
not.
too much. Y'all better go on back around that corner.
But what did they do this time?
The
Because
good
they-
old Commonwealth, I tell you.
and they stood in front of Mayor Fisher's house.
Yeah.
So what was the difference this time?
From what I understood, it was a peaceful protest. It's just they didn't want them protesting up in that area.
That's the way I read it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's the same business. We've got to keep these uppity blacks in line.
It's like with anything they put up, oh, we want you to do it, but not in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right. We support you, but over here, way over here, way over here.
Yep.
You know that's why the black nightclubs still stay open despite all of the murders. They don't want those. They actually give monies to keep colds open because they do not want black people to come up along Frankfurt Avenue and Bardstown Road.
Wow.
And that's a hush circumstance.
I never heard that, but I can see
I
it.
believe it.
There have been 45
Down
people.
up in Coles.
There have been 45 people that have been murdered around, in, or near Coles attached to the nightclub. That would have closed any club down.
I didn't know that because I still go out Frankfurt, Brownsboro Road, Hurstbourne Lane to eat.
You not wearing blue, your boxers are not red. You don't have.
I dress appropriately. I'm not going outdoors with my pants hanging off my butt.
But you still have people, depending on what night it is, they dress appropriately too, up in Coles. It just depends on the night. You got the little OGs,
Absolutely.
But Dr. Sawyer, you won't know about this, but everybody else probably will.
We're gonna take Dr. Sawyer up in there so he know. Get him some.
No, you know what? Dr. Sawyer, they would give Dr. Sawyer the mic. Dr. Sawyer
They would show him so much love.
Esau, what's up?
On Sunday nights, they would have, I don't know if they still do it, but the 50 and over crowd would come up and there on Sundays only from like 6 to about 9:30, and then they get up and leave because everything 30 and under would come up in there. And that's mainly when all the problems started.
Hmm,
We saw the big rift with 4th Street Live.
yeah.
You had men in 3-piece suits that were asked to leave Maker's Mark Steakhouse.
As soon as they opened it. I remember when we went down there and everyone was dressed appropriately. I mean, we had on our jeans and our nice tennis shoes, but my husband had dreads and gold teeth or whatever, but I guess he looked so intimidating. They didn't want us at Strikes to go bowling.
That whole dress code was given
Yeah.
to.
But I mean, you had on a polo. I'm like, are you serious? You know what? You ain't got to worry about us ever coming back. But I had to do a whole lot of talking down that night.
Wow.
Because he wasn't hearing that. He was not hearing that. I'm like, no.
Such a slap in the face.
Yeah, that's when they first opened.
I've always been somebody that bucks the norm, because a lot of my friends used to ask me, back in the day, was I afraid to go in the old Dewdrop Inn that was down there by the stockyards?
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't go in there with an attitude. I go in there, sit down, have a drink, talk to people, and after a while, they got to talk to me, and we passing drinks, laughing and joking. I never felt intimidated by things like that. I've always bucked the norm of, well, you're not supposed to be in here. Why not?
Yep.
So we left off at number 13, right?
Yeah. So we'll pick that up again on Wednesday.
Okay.
It's time to quit. This has
Okay.
been very good. And what we just talked about is a whole thing of what I want you to know is there's a connection between what's happened in the past and what's happening now. It's not new.
Yes.
It's all, you can trace it back to its origins in history. All right. Thank you. Any other questions before we quit?
No,
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes, sir.
What was the topic again? The topics again, the paper you choose from?
For the paper,
Yeah, what was the topics again that you choose from?
Black Methodists, Black Baptists, Black Pentecostals, Prosperity Ministry, or the Civil Rights Movement. Those 5.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can find the syllabus for all the information on exactly what that, and you need to be sure to look at that because there were 5 requirements for that paper that you need to be doing.
All right.
Good. Thanks for asking, Stephen. All right. Anything else? All
I
right.
just thank God for intelligent classmates.
You guys are good. You're good.
We just work hard, that's all.
No, you're
Really,
smart. That's what it is. You're smart.
over.
All right. Love you guys. See you next
All right.
Wednesday.
have a good one.
Safe.